Hello everyone, welcome to Hoosier Legends. I'm Brian Hammonds. There are a lot of race drivers in this state that could be considered a legend, but only one drag racer, Bob Glidden. He grew up on a farm in Whiteland, Indiana, and turned into one of the greatest drivers in drag racing history, and a Hoosier legend.
I grew up a farm boy, just up the road from here. When I was 12 years old, our main tractor broke down, and right in the middle of farming season, couldn't find anyone that could get to it right away. So I pulled it down to a shop here in Whiteland and took it apart, split the tractor, and repaired it myself. And it got me interested in engines. As I became a later teenager, I used to see the Ed Martin Ford commercials on television. Ed Martin Ford, home of the fast Fords. And I wanted a fast Ford. So I bought a 1962 Ford 406 and started out racing on the street. We had about every weekend, a couple of cars would come in from different states to race us. And that's really what got me started in racing.
Those street races, illegal as they were legendary in that time, sounding a lot like a scene from the movie American Graffiti.
Etta, my wife, I met her cruising at the North Side Pole. And the first night I met her, she ended up sitting in the passenger seat counting 1, 2, 3 for us to go to race. And we raced on 37 north of Martinsville a lot. As a matter of fact, one night a guy from somewhere in Illinois brought his 413 Dodge in to race us, and it was prom night. And the whole quarter mile was prom dresses blowing in the wind. It's a night I'll never forget. But we had lots of street races, had a good time.
What were those street races like?
They were a lot of fun. You know, it was kind of like going to a party, and there's lots of people there, and everybody's cheering and betting and money changing hands, and it was just fun.
But Bob wasn't satisfied with just street racing. Eventually, he took his passion to the racetrack.
I decided one weekend to go to Bunker Hill. That's up near Kokomo. And went up there and raced my class and won a trophy. And that was all it took.
So Bob and his wife Etta both went racing, legally now, and they made quite a team.
We raced super stock. We had 2 Mustangs. Etta would drive one and I would drive one. We'd go to super stock meets, and what the deal was, you race the first round and the winner sat out, and then they raced another round. Well, 9 out of 10 times I would win the first round, and then I would drive Etta's car the second round and win it. And we did that for, I'd say 3 years.
And it wasn't just Bob who showed a talent for driving.
One of our very last super stock races, before we went to pro stock, we were at a race in Bowling Green, Kentucky that paid $15,000 to win and $5,000 to win the second round. We got down, Etta was driving one of our cars and I was driving the other. Etta and I got down to the final 3 cars. And we had, because of the bracket, we had to run each other in the semifinals. I told Etta, I said, now, somewhere around 900 foot, just let off so I can win, so we'll be sure to win the 15,000.
He told me to, don't make me strain my engine. And I said, okay. But I'd only been taught to drive one way, and that was dead out.
She didn't let off, and she beat me. And Billy, now, he must have been, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old at the time. He wouldn't speak to her for a week, because she beat me.
It was during those days of hobby racing when Bob was involved in his first serious crash, which led to Etta stepping out of the car for good.
Actually, we were testing our Pro Stock cars at Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we had put on a new wheel that Keystone Wheel came out with that they wanted us to run, and a wheel broke. Back in those days, we didn't have full roll cages. We just had a little roll bar around us, and the car went sideways through a telephone. Actually, the telephone pole went through the car, cut the car in two, and hit me so hard it broke my helmet. And but I came through it okay.
Our children were like 6 and 3, somewhere around there, and the crash was so bad and looked so bad. He came out of it fine, but I told him, I said, listen, I said, no more 2 cars. We have to go to 1 car now because someone has to stay alive to race these 2 kids.
Yeah, she chickened out. That's what I said. One of my biggest regrets, and I've never ever said it to anyone, was that Etta didn't at least make a few runs in one of our Pro Stock cars.
Could she have been as good as you?
She would have been very good.
So Etta went from being a driver to a full-time crew chief. As it turns out, she would become one of the winningest crew chiefs ever. Hoosier Legends, presented by the Central Indiana Chevrolet dealers. Late in 1972, Bob Glidden decided to turn his hobby into his profession. He bought a Pro Stock Pinto from Jack Roush and Wayne Gaff and had immediate success.
The first year, we decided to go to the Super Nationals in California. We'd never been to a Pro Stock race, period. And we ended up getting beat in the finals by Bill Jenkins. And at that race, we won $10,400. We had about $18,000 invested in everything we owned. So after that, through the winter, we tried to prepare for the next season. And the next season, we were world champions.
That World Championship year of 1973 included his first win at the U.S. Nationals, the Super Bowl of drag racing, which is held annually in Claremont, Indiana, just a few miles from the Glidden home.
I can't even explain to you the feeling that we had beating all the big guys and winning our first Indy Nationals.
As it would turn out, Bob would dominate the U.S. Nationals. He went to the finals 15 times during his career, winning 9 U.S. national titles.
You'd like to say it's geographic, that he was here and he understood it, and that certainly was part of it, but you only get to go on that drag strip so often. I mean, it's heavily regulated. I think there was a home team advantage. He's sleeping in his own bed every night. He's operating out of his shop. He knows if he needs something, he can go get it. It's not like racing at Pomona. And I think that certainly played to him.
We worked hard and we were very lucky. We really didn't have any more time on that track than our competitors, but I think we went out of our way to prepare for that race because it was the big race.
Bob won a lot of big races. He was the NHRA Pro Stock champion 4 of his first 6 years in the sport. The farm boy from Whiteland was now a bona fide racing star.
I thought he was really good at this. He's a very, very intelligent person. He grew up on a farm. He worked on tractors. He kept their tractors going. He worked on cars. He worked on his own car and when he was street raced. And I knew that he was so exceptional with naturally aspirated engines that I knew he could be a success.
He was the guy out of the shop in his garage for a very, very long time. And he never was particularly a braggart or anything. He'd go about his business, he'd win. He wanted to make some money, he did. He certainly won a lot of trophies along with that money, but I don't think it ever changed Bob.
What did change in 1979 was Bob's car. He switched from his trademark Ford to Chrysler.
At that point, we had no sponsorship from Ford. And Chrysler Corporation came to us, and we decided to race a Plymouth Arrow the following year. No one knew, but we worked from midsummer to the winter on the Chrysler program. And when we came out the first race in '79, we totally dominated.
One thing he was, without question, was he understood the business he was in, and he had a concept of what he felt was fair. And at that time, he didn't see it, and he especially felt, it was he and Bob Tasca Sr. that really drug Ford almost kicking and screaming into drag racing, where they found an enormous success. But I think he was standing his ground. He said, that's not what I want. Here's what I would like. It's not an exorbitant kind of deal that I'd like to see, but if you can't do it, then that's fine too. And of course, came back and with the Hemi and stomped them all again.
We won every race that year but two, and I red lighted in the final of those two.
1979 was a remarkable year. Driving his new car, he won 9 straight races. He won an incredible 50 consecutive rounds. It was as dominant as you can be in his sport.
That kind of domination over that period of time, yeah, somebody will catch fire. In Formula One, you'll see it all the time. Somebody catches a little quantum leap. It may be a small thing, but it's enough to make the difference, and then they dominate for a while. But over that period of time, no, Glidden was very special to be able to do that. And that was Pro Stock has always been a very competitive field. So for him to do that where everything was so tight anyway, and to keep it for a long time, that's spectacular.
We always went there feeling that we had a chance to win, and so many times we got the right break at the right time. Ordinarily you need at least one good luck round to win 4 in a row, and it was a miracle.
Bob would win the Pro Stock Championship in 1979 in a walk. In 1980, it was closer. Glidden needed a miracle at the final event of the year.
The World Championship was done, basically, Rare and Morrison with Lee Shepard. Had it wrapped up. It was almost mathematically impossible for us to win. And we go to the World's Finals, and Lee red lights in the semifinals. Well, the only way we could win the championship was to win the race and set both the ET and speed record. And back then, well, not then, still, the Santa Ana winds in a part of the afternoon would come, which was a headwind for us. And by the time we ran the finals, the wind turns around, and we did set both ends of the record and won the race and won the World Finals. Won the World Championship again.
That was Glidden's 6th World Championship. But there were also some tough times along the way.
I was extremely frightened. I watched it. It was one of the worst I'd ever seen. And I was frightened about what I'd find.
Bob Glidden was on top of his sport. He had accomplished just about everything a driver can accomplish in Pro Stock. So did Bob have any desire to try his hand in the more popular funny car or top fuel dragsters?
None whatsoever.
Why?
I loved what I did. We were successful at what we did, and probably wouldn't have been doing something else. It took a lot more money, a lot more manpower, and we weren't equipped for any of that.
I think that he clearly realized that he was dominant, and there was no sense to change that dominance. And even after he stopped driving, he continued to help people in Pro Stock. That is a substantial step to go from Pro Stock and step into a nitro car. And it's also one that's not a little scary. It's a lot scary. And I think he's just decided, I don't need all that. I'm making what I want to make. Yeah, I'm not going to get the spectacular dollars that they may give to the top fuel champion, but I'm happy and I'm still living in Whiteland and things are good.
So Glidden continued to dominate the pro stock ranks. But racing is dangerous. And in Atlanta in 1986, this happened.
They leave right together. Identical reaction times. This is going to be a classic Ford versus General Motors drag race. It is. It appears. Oh, Glidden is upside down. Glidden in big trouble. Oh, this is a bad one, Brock.
It is indeed. Got into that fence. The car continues to flop and roll.
At that time, there was a hill at the end of the racetrack. And if the wind was coming from the right direction, it kind of made the cars very unstable. And right before the finish line, the car went airborne, turned upside down, and rolled all the way through the shutoff area on the guardrail. And everything in the car was totally destroyed except where I was sitting.
Do you remember that wreck unfolding and what you were thinking at the time?
I didn't think it was ever going to stop. I mean, it was probably 8 or 9 seconds, but it seemed like a long time.
And that bothered me worse, I think, than it bothered him. He was like, he got up and brushed it off, and he climbs out, and it's like, oh boy, we'll be back.
Oh, they came back all right. No worse for wear. Glidden continued to reel off pro stock championships, winning 5 straight from 1985 through 89.
We had a close-knit deal within our organization. Information didn't get passed on to our competitors. It was the whole package. We were the oddball, we were the Ford, and all of our competitors were GM or Chrysler, mostly GM. And I can't say that it was a close-knit deal with us because everyone hated us.
That's not completely accurate. Not everyone hated Bob Glidden and his dominance, only his competitors. His fans loved him, as did those he helped along the way. You see, this hard-nosed racer, this ruthless competitor, had a big heart.
Make-A-Wish called us and had a family that wanted to come and see a race at Denver, Colorado. So Etta prepared everything so that we got the family a motel room with us in the same motel we stayed in, and they stayed in our pit area throughout the race. This young man they knew was going to die soon. We were lucky enough to win the race, and he got to be in the winner's circle. We gave him the medallion and the trophy for winning the race, and a few months later, when he died, he asked he wanted to be buried with our t-shirt and that trophy. People don't, in those situations, don't realize how important it is to be able to touch someone's life in a positive way.
Bob Glidden won his 10th and final Pro Stock Championship in 1989. He continued to race until 1997, when he retired, but not on his own terms.
I had a verbal commitment from Ford Motor Company that if I did a new engine for the Ford, that they would renew my contract for 3 years. We spent the money and did the engine program, and they didn't renew our contract, so that was the end of everything for us. It was a financial situation. We didn't have the money to do what we had to do, so we stopped.
8 years later, Glidden was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, taking his rightful place alongside the greats in all forms of racing.
When you consider that, how the Motorsports Hall of Fame is put together, it's kind of front-loaded with roundy round and then maybe road racing and then drag racing. And for him to be recognized by that eclectic group, I think was pretty significant.
I think that was probably one of the highlights of his life, getting recognized for what he had done and what he had accomplished. He was a proud man, but it didn't show.
These days, Bob is still in Whiteland, enjoying life with Etta, their dogs, and their collection of exotic birds. The only racing they follow is their son Billy's career, pausing only occasionally to reflect on what was a remarkable career.
It was a storybook. If I had written the story, it wouldn't have turned out that well.
I don't think we imagined how much success we would have, but we both worked really hard, 7 days a week, raised 2 kids, worked at the shop, traveled to the races. No, I never dreamed it, but as it happened, you don't really realize it. You know, it just kind of slides by you until it's all over, and then you look back and it's like, wow.
He's really a tribute to the success of the common man, because he comes out of a Ford dealership working as a mechanic, had no real reason to think that he could go any further than that job. And yet he put it out there, he took the risks, he took the financial risks, he took the physical risks, and he triumphed. In the whole game, he's probably 1 out of 1,000.
I told you, I'm the luckiest old fart you'll ever meet.
Luck is a funny thing. As a wise man once said, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Bob Glidden worked so hard, he became one of the all-time greats in his sport, and a Hoosier legend.